Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate Day number 847, Wednesday, July the 24th, 2019. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, so it is Wednesday. Of course, that means I'll be taking out the trash and having me some chicken. Every Wednesday. Taking out the trash, having some chicken. Alrighty, let's get to primarily going to focus on the two big stories I talked about yesterday that I couldn't get to. We're going to talk about those today, as well as a few other things in the mix. So let's go ahead and get started on that right away. So I guess the big news coming out of the UK is that Boris Johnson has easily defeated his opponent. He is now the Prime Minister. And what does that mean? Well, certainly Brexit should now happen, because Boris has come out and said that Brexit is going to happen one way or another in October. I think it's right around Halloween, I think. So it's going to be tough. Obviously, I don't know. I'm not that up on the parliamentary situation in Great Britain, but it's been my observation over the last few years with Theresa May that the votes are not there for any kind of a deal, or certainly not the deal that the EU is putting forth. I don't know that they're willing to move on that. I think in a lot of ways the EU would like to, at this point, see the UK go, but they still want to tether them to various types of payments and various other things. So I think that it's ultimately going to come down to a hard Brexit, and Boris, of course, says if a hard Brexit is what it's going to be, that's what it's going to be. He's not going to delay it beyond that. He is going to face one hell of a fight, but Boris Johnson, he looks kind of crazy. Sometimes he says kind of crazy things. But, you know, I've been watching this guy for a few years, and I'll say one thing about Boris Johnson. Do not underestimate this dude's intelligence. He is very, very smart. He's very, very smart. He's very politically astute. And that's where I think that he's far more politically astute than Theresa May. I think Boris Johnson understands that if he doesn't deliver, you're probably looking at the end of the Conservative Party in the UK. Or at least ways they'll be in the woods for 20 years. So I think there's large implications for the party here, and I think that that's what Boris Johnson is looking at. And he has been a Brexit supporter. I mean, he's never really backflipped at all. He's pretty much been a pretty good supporter of Brexit. So I think it's good news. And as far as how that will affect information coming out regarding Spygate and the UK's role in that, I don't think that Boris Johnson is in any great hurry to expose all the things that they did. It's going to be quite embarrassing. I think that he will probably have to acknowledge some things, but I think he's going to look for some cover from Trump if he can get it. So I do think that you'll see more cooperation from Boris Johnson, but I do think that his cooperation is going to be based on hoping to limit the damage. And I think that that's damage control mode is where he'll be. But I do expect that we'll probably get a little bit more cooperation from the UK's role in Spygate from Boris Johnson than we have seen from Theresa May or anyone else over there. So anyway, I guess we can say congratulations to our friends who are subscribed to this channel from the UK. We have quite a few. And so hopefully they're feeling better about things today. And again, we've been following Brexit very closely since the vote went down, and it's a shame the way this thing has gone. But hopefully Boris Johnson will keep his word and finally put a dagger in the heart of the people fighting Brexit, and he will deliver in October, and the UK will become a free sovereign nation once again. And I'm looking forward to, like many Americans, the president as well, doing everything that we can to assist our good friends over in the UK. They want their freedom. I certainly hope that they get it. And once they do, I think that Trump's going to really reach out and try to do everything he can to help the UK, because you can absolutely bet your bottom dollar that the European Union is going to do everything they can to make life hell on our good friends across the pond. And so it'll be important for Trump to come in and try to alleviate some of the suffering that's going to be imposed on them as a result of them taking a hard Brexit. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Well, tomorrow we will, of course, have the hearings with Uncle Bob, the drive-by executioner, of course, and the folks coordinating all this, the folks who actually brought Mueller in, the entire seventh floor of the FBI, the top tier of the DOJ, all lawfare operatives, all part of the lawfare group. Strzok, Page, McCabe, all those people Comey brought in, top people DOJ, all lawfare types associated with lawfare, the lawfare group. So now it looks like Mueller in the last hours thrown a curveball. It looks like he wants to bring Aaron Zebley, which was one of his lead lawyers on his posse. Now the Republicans are raising hell about this, but I don't know if there's anything they're going to do. So it looks like Aaron Zebley will probably be there, but my guess is Republicans just certainly aren't going to direct any questions to him. They're going to direct all their questions to Uncle Bob, the drive-by executioner. Keep in mind, when we're talking about the lawfare group, I talk about them a lot because they're really the nucleus of the core of the people that were behind so many of the things that happened once Trump announced that he was running for president. Of course, it was the same group, this lawfare group, that was behind exonerating the rotten Reverend Clinton. It was the lawfare group that was behind the Trump-Russia hoax. It's the lawfare group that put Uncle Bob the executioner in as the special counsel. And of course, it's the lawfare group that's trying to work the impeachment angle. They also are the ones who came up with the insurance policy. That was Benjamin Witz, who heads up that particular group. So this is basically what this is, and I expect that Uncle Bob will probably put most everybody to sleep. In fact, he might actually fall asleep himself while he's actually testifying. He'll be missing his afternoon nap, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, I expect it to be a shit show, but I do expect that the Republicans who will get a chance to question Uncle Bob, and there's some good ones in there, hopefully they will do a good job of sticking it to Uncle Bob the executioner, holding his feet to the fire about the coup that he was running. And as far as the Democrats are concerned, I'm sure that they've worked out some sort of a plot. We know they actually had a dress rehearsal. They actually had a rehearsal. They actually rehearsed this. So it's a staged event, 100%. I'm sure there's been a few little things they've worked out with Uncle Bob and Aaron Zebley to give them something that they can use to move forward with impeachment, or certainly to try to get the support of more Democrats to move forward with impeachment. But I think they're going to fail at this, and I think they're going to fail pretty badly. So I really think this is going to be fairly non-eventful unless somebody really screws up. Uncle Bob the executioner has to pretty much stay within the realm of the Mueller report. And if he starts ad-libbing, freelancing, and starting to offer his suggestions or his opinions and things and such, that's when things could get pretty tricky, and he knows that. And so I think that Uncle Bob the executioner is going to be executing whatever plot that they came up with, but I really don't think it's going to have much, going to get much traction, to be honest with you, because I think the Republicans will be right there as soon as whatever they drop comes out. I'm sure Republicans will be right there to throw a wrench in the spokes, and my guess is that's what they're planning for. So that will be happening today, actually, as this will be Wednesday. So Uncle Bob the executioner in his hearings. Now, let's get to the first of the two bombshell stories from yesterday of John Solomon that we didn't get a chance to cover. And this story, really, the general idea here is what you'll find in this particular story is exactly the same sort of MO as we see with the Michael Flynn case, and as we've seen with the Papadopoulos case, the Carter Page case, and all the rest. All these things, including the whole Trump-Russia collusion thing, this is classic Andrew Wise-ass. This is classic Andrew Wise-ass technique. It's the same thing he's been doing for years and years and years. And here's just another example of it. But now this particular case might end up bringing tremendous embarrassment and possibly even a pretty harsh rebuke from the judge in this case once it works itself through, just because of what we've learned up to this point, thanks to John Solomon. So let me go ahead and go through this for you so you get the gist of the story. and why Andrew Weisass may have put the DOJ's tit in a ringer. Okay, here's the title of the story, first of all. How Mueller's deputy, Andrew Weissman's offer to an oligarch could boomerang on the DOJ. So here's the story, basically in a nutshell. Just 2 weeks after Uncle Bob the executioner was appointed, Weisass contacted lawyers for Ukrainian oligarch Dmitry Firtash. Weissman had offered to make some charges that Firtash was facing. He was making offer to make those charges go away, and the charges had to do with bribery. And so Weissman's offering to make the charges go away if Firtash could deliver some dirt on Trump and Manafort. Now here's the backstory. The backstory is that Weisass made the overture just at the time that the dossier was being outed as junk. Also, at the same time, the charges that were filed against Firtash back in 2014, having to do with bribery, were being debunked, and the case against Firtash was falling apart. So Weissman makes the offer, even though the Mueller team had little, if any, ability to have the charges against Firtash dropped. So here comes Andrew Weisass, and he's trying to run a game on these lawyers. He must have thought they were stupid, making them think, hey, if you can give me some dirt on Trump and Manafort, I'll make those charges you're facing go away. Now, the problem is that the charges he's facing are with the prosecutor and the U.S. attorney in another state. I think it's I probably have it down here somewhere. I think it's New Jersey or one of these other states. But it's not New York, and it's not a case brought by the Mueller team. It's not a case brought by the main justice or anything like that. This is a case that's being brought from another state. And therefore, it's Chicago. It's actually in Chicago. So these charges are being brought against Firtash by the U.S. attorney in, this other state. So therefore, how Weissman thought that he could intervene in this case that's being run out of Chicago, and that he could suddenly walk in and say, hey, I can make the Chicago case go away if you help me with this. Now, obviously, the attorneys for Firtash are scratching their head going, wait a minute, how's the guy from the Mueller team, from Main Justice, going to be able to, manipulate the case, that's going on, in another state? It's not even his case. It's in Chicago. So they didn't think Weissman could deliver, first of all, plus they didn't like him and his attitude or his... And more importantly, what he wanted from Firtash simply could not deliver. So this is another standard tactic that we see used by Weisass constantly, using this same tactic. But it gets worse. Firtash's legal team, of course, knew Weissman was pulling a stunt, and they did not bite. So Weissman then took the extraordinary measure to disclose to Firtash's lawyers intimate details of the investigation into Trump and Manafort, which he shouldn't be doing. Should not be doing. Here's Weissman taking intimate details of a case that the case they're working on with Trump and Russia, and he's now giving that information to the lawyers for Firtash, who has nothing to do with the case whatsoever. And in normal situation, prosecutors would never do this. But this is how desperate that Weissman was, and this is the tactics he will use. He doesn't care. He's never been held accountable, really, for this type of stuff, and he's been doing it for years. So Weissman took the extraordinary measures to disclose to Firtash's lawyers intimate details of the investigation into Trump and Manafort. Firtash's team says that Weissman told them that he believed a company called Bayrock tied to an FBI informant, Felix Sater, had made substantial investments with Donald Trump's companies, and that prosecutors were looking for dirt on Jared Kushner. Also, that a Ukrainian group tied to Manafort was working with Russian Secret Service Authority and may have been involved with interfering in the 2016 election. But Firtash had no information on Weissman's allegations, so he declined the offer. Sounds a whole lot like what they tried to do with Deripaska. And the Deripaska was pretty much the same thing. Well, I don't know anything about what you're talking about. I can't give you any of that dirt, first of all, because it sounds crazy, and I don't think it's true. And second of all, I don't have anything. And this is the same thing that happened here. Firtash, here's Weissman giving these intimate details about Trump Russia, this company supposedly affiliated with Manafort, Felix Sater, his association with Trump, and all this kind of stuff. He's dropping all this stuff on these attorneys for Firtash, and they're going, what's this have to do with our case? How's that going to make our case, go away? It doesn't. And they were smart enough to realize that. Weissman was trying to play these people. Well, they're obviously smarter than that. So, for two reasons. Number one, they didn't trust or believe Weissman could deliver. And number two, Mr. Firtash simply did not have any information, just like Deripaska, on any of the claims that Weisass was making. So eventually, the Department of Justice did win a ruling to have Firtash extradited to Chicago to face charges. But then, Firtash's legal team filed new evidence. And the evidence they filed? The stuff they just got from Weisass. So Weisass, now, he went and gave all these intimate details, and now they win the extradition hearing, in which case Firtash's lawyers counter that by saying, hey, Mr. Judge, take a look at this stuff that Weissman gave us. And he drops all this information that in this new filing, which, brings out the stuff that Weissman had given to these attorneys. And so this new evidence is entered into the record in court, and this is happening in Austria, by the way, and which causes the Austrian court to look at this information that came from Weisass, and of course they ended up reversing course, and they order a delay in the extradition. There was a complete wrench into the spokes now of the Chicago case. So now here you have the Chicago U.S. attorney, prosecutors. They're finding out that the case that they just were successful in winning the extradition, they're now expecting that Firtash is going to be extradited to have to come and face charges. All of a sudden, his lawyers take the stuff Weissman gave him, and he drops it on the court, and then the court says, oh, in this case, and they reverse the thing. So now you've probably got Chicago U.S. attorneys seriously pissed off at Weissman and his crew, which of course is the Lawfare Group, and so you can expect that there's some pretty hot, nasty things going on between the DOJ, main DOJ, along with Weissman, leftovers from the Mueller team, and of course now the U.S. attorney in Chicago. This has created a very big problem with their case, and they're likely not very happy about it. So the new filing that Firtash's lawyers did, based on what they got from Weissman, because they checked out Weissman's stuff, and when they went and checked out Weissman's stuff, they found out that Weissman's stuff was a bunch of garbage, just like all of Weissman's stuff. So in checking the witnesses and things that Weissman had cited in their testimonies, the new filing cites two of the key witnesses for the DOJ have recounted their testimony, claiming that the Department of Justice grossly misquoted them and pressured them to sign statements affirming their knowledge of Firtash's alleged bribery. Same thing tried to do to Flynn. Firtash's lawyers showed proof to the court that Weissman submitted a false and misleading document to a foreign court, which is highly unethical. Weissman has put the DOJ in a very bad spot. Weissman was told that the information he had was not legitimate, but he used it anyway. Same thing he always does. So he goes over here and he gives Firtash, first of all, he tells Firtash he can get the charges in Chicago dropped, which he can't. And of course his lawyers were smart enough to know that. Then he supplies them with information and evidence and tries to get Firtash to try to... what he was really trying to do was give Firtash's attorneys all this garbage, which was not true. It was false evidence, to get Firtash to give up information based on the false evidence, thinking he was going to get his charges dropped in Chicago, which would not have happened. And of course, Firtash's people didn't buy it. So now this information has come forward. So now Wiseman has got his tit in a ringer, especially with the Chicago U.S. Attorney and Main Justice, because now they know that the information he gave Fardash's lawyers was based on lies and false information. The witnesses, the same thing that was done to witnesses like Papagalopoulos and Flynn, is the same exact thing they did to the witnesses in this case. Hey, they create these documents, say, here, sign these documents, these are your sworn statements, you're going to sign these statements saying that you did all this, when in fact a lot of it was false and couldn't be proven. So again, it just shows more dirty dealings with Andrew Wiseass, but this one may come back and bite him in the butt, because he's now crossed a U.S. attorney in Chicago, and Main Justice is going to have to sort all this out for Wiseass. Not to mention, I'm not sure that he doesn't have some culpability in, when we get to the end of the Spygate investigation, I'm not so sure that Wiseass is not going to be in some trouble for the things that he was a part of here. Well, let's see. We got five. Okay, we're running out of time. Few quick news items. Michael Flynn's associate in the Turkish lobbying case, Bijan Rafikin, was found guilty. He could be facing up to 15 years in jail. This is what they're going to try to do to Flynn. It's probably not going to fly, because in the case of Michael Flynn, his statement is that he was not lobbying for the Turkish government. He did not know he was lobbying for the Turkish government. He was working for a Dutch sponsor, a Dutch company or Dutch group, not Turkey. He had no idea that the Dutch group was connected to Turkey. No one ever told him that, and he said this in good faith. He will not sign. This is why he will not sign the document that DOJ wants him to sign, because it will make him admit that he knew that this Dutch company he was working for was affiliated with Turkey. Therefore, he would be affiliated with Turkey, lobbying for Turkey, and he simply says, I'm not going to do it because I did not know. So this is what they're going to have to try to prove, and apparently they have no evidence whatsoever to prove that Flynn knew that this company, Dutch company he was working for, had any association at all with Turkey. So I believe that ultimately Flynn's case is going to be thrown out because it's just going downhill. The judge even asked him, "Do you have any evidence to show? Do you have any financial records? Have you talked to the have you talked to the Dutch government? Have you talked to these people? Have you gotten any information? Have you confirmed anything? You got any facts and figures? Any numbers? Any checks? Any receipts? Anything? No, they have nothing. Have not even checked it out. It's almost like assuming it. They have nothing to tie Flynn directly to Turkey. So I think Flynn's going to walk in this deal, but his partner just is facing up to 15 years, which we can assume he actually did know. We have Cory Booker, who says he wants to punch Trump because he has so much testosterone. I don't think so. He said that to that no-talent hack, Seth Meyers, on Late Night. No, Cory Booker, in fact, I actually thought the guy was getting estrogen treatments or something. Let's see. Judicial Watch has filed an ethical complaint against Ilhan Omar over her marriage, tax and student loan fraud, and potential violations in her immigration. Of course, following that, we have Omar today. Her latest statement today is that she wants to see taxpayer-funded abortions for illegal immigrants, not just free health care for illegal immigrants, but taxpayer-funded abortions for illegal immigrants. And that's why Trump is going to keep her on the front page every day from now, between now and 2020. Well, we have Chuck Grassley, and he's dealing right now with the Office of Net Assessment, which of course was the people who were so-called supposedly employing Stefan Halper, the fat man. The Office of Net Assessment is what he was supposedly working for. It was just his cover for his CIA cover in the DOD, which is very, very common. So Grassley has given the Office of Net Assessment until tomorrow, Thursday, to turn over all records on Halper to the Senate. Grassley has questions on why Halper was paid over $1 million over the last 4 years. He wants information on the 3 trips that Halper took to London. He wants information on the 2016 interviews that Halper did with former Russian diplomats and intelligence officers. Now, this goes back to a request that Grassley made about a year ago, and he had requested everything on Halper, and they simply did not produce very much information at all, not enough to satisfy Grassley. So now he's making demands again. I don't know why, because they never actually seem to care about any demands. They don't actually deliver on anything, and there never seems to be any way to force them or cause them any issues or anything like that. So, it's nice that Grassley's making the effort, but it's mostly political grandstanding. We'll see if any information about Halper actually shows up. I wouldn't bet on it, not a single penny. Now, the other major story that we talked about yesterday, which was just really at that point a tease, we didn't even know. John Solomon just said that there may be some information coming out on Mifsud in the next couple of days. Now that information is out. John Solomon has published the article, and basically John Solomon has spent some time in conversation with Stephen Rowe, R-O-H, the Swiss lawyer, friend, former business partner, and spokesman and attorney for Joseph Mifsud. No, he's not dead. I know American intelligence media did a video. I'm not a big fan of American intelligence media. I watched a few of their videos maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and not impressed, and I've never really watched them again. So anything I hear coming from AIM, I just kind of in one ear and out the other. I don't pay much attention. So anyway, so John Solomon has interviewed Stephen Rowe. So you can go on over to The Hill and read the article, but I'll give you the nuts and bolts of it right here. So John Solomon spoke with Stephen Rowe, Mifsud's friend, former business partner, and lawyer and spokesperson. And what we learned from this article from John Solomon is that the Department of Justice, specifically John Durham, the prosecutor John Durham, appointed by Barr, has been communicating with Rowe over the past couple months during the summer to set up a meeting with Mifsud. They want to have a talk with Mifsud. Now, Mifsud also gave a deposition to the FBI, and Rowe has stated, yes, I can definitely provide you with that entire deposition. So Durham has likely already received the deposition from Mifsud and the FBI that he did back, I think, in 2018, and another one in 2016. So Durham's already gotten these depositions. Now he's trying to set up, and this may have already happened, we don't know. Rowe was not saying if it's already happened, but he's saying that during the summer, Durham's team was speaking with Rowe to get a hold of these depositions and to set up an interview with Durham and his people and Mifsud. They're all over it. So the DOJ is, according to John Solomon, the Department of Justice, that's Mr. Durham, is targeting Joseph Mifsud, and they are seeking to interview him to determine if any improper surveillance occurred on Papadopoulos. So then, right after that, along with that John Solomon story, we have Maria Bartiromo tweeting out excerpts from this, which says that Mifsud's lawyer, in his conversation with, that'd be Stephen Rowe, in his conversation with John Solomon, has said that his client, Mifsud, was a long-time cooperator of Western intelligence, who was specifically tasked with introducing Papadopoulos to Russian contacts. Mifsud was part of a sophisticated intelligence operation targeting Papadopoulos, says yes, and yes, and we've already covered that. Durham is seeking a personal interview with Mifsud. So this is what was learned in conversation with Rowe. Rowe was telling Durham's team that Mifsud was a longtime client for Western intelligence who was specifically tasked with introducing Papadopoulos to Russian contacts, and that Mifsud was part of a sophisticated intelligence operation targeting Papadopoulos, which is what we've all known for a very long time. And of course, Durham is seeking the interview with Mifsud. Now, Mifsud was being directed, according to Stephen Rowe, that's what he told Solomon, that Mifsud was being directed by people at Link campus and the London Centre for International Law Practice. In other words, all the people that Papaglopoulos has stated. Exactly what Papaglopoulos has got in his book is exactly what Rowe is telling Solomon to be true. And as I mentioned earlier, Rowe is going to be giving, if he has not done so already, the deposition that Mifsud gave to the FBI in 2018. We also are learning from Stephen Rowe that Mifsud did exchange emails with the FBI in 2017 and in 2018. So you can assume that Durham is going to want to get his hands on the emails that were exchanged between Mifsud and the FBI when he meets with him. We also learned from Stephen Rowe that Mifsud has never tried to evade the Mueller team, and that the Mueller team has misrepresented facts about Mifsud. Because if you remember, one of the things that they hit Papaglopoulos on is they said that the information that he gave them, not being true about when he met Mifsud, had something to do with why they weren't able to, interfered with them being able to actually interview Mifsud or whatever. Well, Stephen Rowe is saying that's total BS. That there was that Mifsud has never, ever tried to evade Mueller or anyone seeking to interview him until, things became dangerous. Once his name came out, obviously, it was a matter of personal security. But prior to that, when he was here in February 2018, or 2017, February 2017, according to Stephen Rowe, Mueller's account that, we were having issues, we couldn't get with Mifsud or whatever, that's not true according to Stephen Rowe, that Mifsud was able to make himself available to Mueller at any time until he got into a situation where he was forced into hiding. And I don't think that was Mifsud's choice. I think it was people at Link campus, Italian intelligence, probably British intelligence, probably said, hey, your name's out now, things are kind of dangerous, you got to lay low. It wasn't Mifsud's call. He was being directed this entire time by people from Link and from this London Law Center, who were all working for, it appears, British intelligence, working with the CIA and possibly the FBI as well. So there you go. The mystery of Mr. Mifsud, it's not going to be a mystery much longer, because Mr. Durham is hot on his heels. He's in conversation with this Stephen Rowe to set up a meeting. This may have already happened. There are emails between Mifsud and the FBI from 2017, 2018. He'll get that. He's going to get the deposition from Mifsud. And you can bet that Durham is going to be asking a lot of questions. And as you can see from what Stephen Rowe is saying, he's saying exactly what I've been reporting here, what many of you have been seeing reported in other places, exactly the 180 degrees opposite of the case that Uncle Bob makes in the Mueller report. And I can expect that since this story hit tonight, that by tomorrow, certainly Jordan and Meadows, because Meadows keeps very close contact with John Solomon. He's one of Solomon's sources. So you can bet that Solomon, before he even wrote the article, probably contacted Meadows and gave him this information. So you can bet tomorrow in those hearings, or today I should say, in the hearings, you can bet that Meadows is going to directly address this issue with Mifsud. He's going to address that to Mueller and probably give him this information and say, what do you have to say about that, Bob? Uncle Bob's going to be squirming in his seat tomorrow quite a bit. Thank you so much for tuning in. Back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you guys. Bye.